Welcome to Inside Flair, which stands for Flourish in Life Through Art and Resources for Endometriosis. I'm your host, Priscilla, and on this podcast, we talk about the ins and outs of what it's like living with endometriosis and chronic illness, how to use art as a tool for coping and healing, and the power of storytelling as a way to spread awareness about the disease. Today, I had the pleasure of meeting with Prajakta of Gotta Love Endo, and I'm so very grateful for her being willing to share with all of us in the Flair community her personal journey living with endo and her experience as a visual artist. She produces a wide range of amazing artworks. Welcome, and thank you so much again for joining me today. Please share a little bit more about yourself.
So my journey started very young. At 14, I started my periods, and obviously pain came along with that. But at 16, during my GCSE year, it really hit me, and I had my first surgery. And they took my appendix, but didn't get an endometriosis diagnosis. And it took about a year of them convincing me that it was anxiety. But then I had the pleasure of going to India, which is very lucky for me because here I'm sure I wouldn't have gotten a diagnosis till now. And there, within 24 hours, I got my endometriosis diagnosis. And I came back and I had my second surgery in the UK. But again, the waiting time was about 2 years, so I could luckily go private. And I also got a Crohn's diagnosis with my endometriosis. I had endometriosis on multiple organs, and I was only 18 at the time. And yeah, it was really, really overwhelming, especially at such a young age to go through surgery. And my schooling at that point had stopped. I couldn't go back to school. All my friends had gone to uni, and I was sitting at home recovering from surgery. So that was really, it was really isolating. But then about 6 months later, as soon as I started recovering from surgery, I found the endometriosis community to be a huge support system, and I got in touch with a lot of them. They were very, very helpful. I actually got my surgeon from a reference from the community, which is really helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I wanted to give something back because they did so much for me. And I actually learned about endometriosis from Instagram rather than from the doctors, and I took my own research. So it was, they did a lot for me. And so while I was in bed and in pain for the 2-3 years, I was doing art because that's all I could do with the medication side effects and the pain. And so I started doing art related to endometriosis and how I thought the pain could be visualized. And my first piece that I did was a designer uterus. And then the second one, which the community was really supportive of, was an abdomen with all these things that we describe our pain as. And that had such a good response, and I was so happy. And people were telling me that they took it to their doctors, their friends, their family, just to kind of to get them to understand what this pain actually feels like. And they said that it really helped them themselves believe that they weren't faking it, because I feel like a lot of the time when you're in pain consistently for so long, you start to convince yourself as well that, maybe this isn't real, because I'm sure I did it a lot. I still do it. I'm like, maybe it's not as bad as it actually feels. So having it in front of you, because obviously endometriosis, we can't see it. So having something to look at and be like, hey, that's what my pain feels like. It was very validating for me as well, not just for everyone else. And as it progressed, I started drawing other warriors, and I actually just hit 50 warriors yesterday. that I've drawn, which is a good milestone.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, that's roughly my journey so far.
So I was going to ask, I have lots of questions, especially for listeners. So where are you located, and what exact type of work do you make? Like, what's your medium? I know, so you started saying you went to India to receive your diagnosis, correct?
Yeah.
And now where are you based?
So I'm based in the UK, about an hour from London. Yeah, I had my second surgery in Oxford, which is best in the world, obviously, but it came back 3 months later, so I'm not very convinced.
Right?
So yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what type of work do you do? Like, if for anyone that doesn't know, or maybe is just listening, can't see,
Yeah.
do you want to share a little bit more about that? So go ahead.
Yeah. So I mainly related to chronic illness, I do digital art, firstly because it's faster, takes less of a mess. And yeah, it's really nice to be able to actually transform someone's pictures and someone's experience that they've documented into this artwork. Digital art makes that a little bit easier. And then I do acrylic, and a lot of my work is intertwined with my heritage, and it is inspired by Indian culture. And I do a lot of intricate designs. I'm also a henna artist, so that does come into my work. Like I said, my first piece for God of Lavender was a designer uterus. So I did use like intricate designs for that to create that. And yeah, I think that's my main work, digital and acrylic.
So you were saying you hit your 50th warrior. So can you tell me, tell us a little bit more about your process? So you you paint or create these works of art that are inspired by an endo warrior. That's right.
Yeah.
What does the
Yes. Yeah.
process look like?
Initially it was just a all year round thing that I just started to build. And these warriors, they gave me their pictures of them from surgery or anything really they thought was related to their chronic illness. It wasn't just for endometriosis warriors. I've done warriors who've had liver transplants as well, which was really inspiring. And I've read all of these stories, and I've got about 10 more to do in the next week. But I've read each one, and each one is different. And it's so inspiring and it's so heartbreaking at the same time. But yeah, so I take their pictures that they've given me related to their chronic illness, and I make a piece trying to illustrate their whole story, or kind of them as a whole, maybe not just related to chronic illness, but also what they do or what they love. A few of them have their dogs next to them. Recently, I did one for a photographer, so I did her in a couple Polaroids. So anything related to that, to kind of illustrate them as a whole person, not just as this illness.
I love that so much. It's really powerful, especially because you're putting into, like we say on this podcast, creativity equals visibility, and you're creating that picture. It can be, I imagine, healing for both you and the endo warrior, and I really love that. Do you feel like that being diagnosed at such an young age, like, how did that shape the way that you see yourself, and how did that change, or did it, the way that you approached your art over time? So
Yeah, I had quite a journey with accepting myself, because even physically I changed so much in the span of 4 years. I mean, I started off as obviously an insecure teenage girl who just started her periods, and it was very that's when I started to understand myself, and suddenly all of this is changing, and I had my first surgery, and it took so long to kind of look at myself in the mirror and see these scars. And now I look at them and I don't think that's such a big deal, and they're just part of me, and mostly I kind of love them, and they show that I've fought this war and I healed from it. And yeah, but it took me a long time to accept that and get there. And I realized that all these insecurities I had as a 16-year-old girl, they've completely disappeared. And your body changes so fast and so drastically, especially with chronic illnesses. I mean, at 18, I was on a really high course of steroids. So I gained 12 kg or 15 in about 8 weeks, which is really horrifying. Yeah. So I've still got the stretch marks. I had bright red stretch marks on my arms, on my thighs, on my stomach, and it was really scary. And my face was literally a balloon. I could not look at myself in the mirror. And I was actually going through pictures the other day, and I looked at myself, and I honestly I started crying because it was so. I can't remember how I felt. I completely blocked that out. But yeah, it was a really transformative time. But it did make me learn that, everything's changing and you can't just focus on one thing. And, if you start accepting one thing, it's going to change, and then you're going to try to accept it all over again. And you start that journey again and again. So at this point, it is what it is. And yeah, it took a long time to get there. But as a young girl, I think I didn't even have the chance to kind of settle in myself. And that period of time, my whole teenage years, literally, I was in bed or in and out of hospitals, and I did not get the chance to go to parties, and all my friends are clubbing, and their biggest problem is, they've spent the weekend on the beach drinking, and now they have a headache on Monday morning. And mine is, I can barely get out of bed, and I'm, it's a very different experience. And especially when people around you are all jumping around and achieving their goals, and I was on track to do big things, and my life completely flipped overnight. So yeah, it took a lot of accepting, and it took a lot of finding another purpose, and I think that's where my art really came in. And especially when I started this account, it gave me the sense of purpose, and turning this pain into this purpose it's been huge for me. And working with the warriors, especially, I mean, all the other artwork is great and it's really satisfying for me, but working with these warriors and sharing their stories, and it's not even telling the world about their stories, but them seeing the illustrations makes my week. Like, I love it when they look at it and they feel satisfied and they feel like, oh my god, this is me, and I love it. So yeah, that it's really helped me.
I think that it's a wonderful opportunity that you're providing these women, and I can imagine how rewarding it is, what it feels like you deserve that. I apologize. I'm really sorry that you had to go through that, especially at such a young age. I think those of us that maybe feel like, oh, I wish I got a diagnosis way earlier, way sooner, but think about that there are positives and negatives that come with that,
Yeah,
and how it's affecting, like you said, what would seem normal or you should be doing at that age, and how it affects you. Because for a lot of us, I know we just push through and push through, but everybody's story is different, like you said, and especially the way it's going to impact your future. I mean, I know I can speak for myself. At that age, it was kind of no question. Like, after school, you go on to college or, things like that.
yeah,
And for me, art was an escape. I'll definitely say that
yeah,
wasn't until later in life that it was a way for me to process things that I was going through. For me, it was more of I liked having control over something, especially when I
Yeah.
was younger. I felt like I had no control over what was going on around me in life, at home, at school. And I, I fell in love with art as a way to do that, that felt stable, that felt comfortable, and like, my I don't know, say like, yeah, kind of like an escape or a feel good.
Yeah.
And the way that you're describing how you've been able to turn it into something that's giving back, like you said, that's how I feel a lot with flair, especially because I somewhat, to some extent, feel like I'm new, still very new to the endo community. I wish I had that type of support when, back when I was just learning about what endometriosis was. Like you said,
Yeah.
you learned the word, did you say on Instagram? Your doctor? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was just trying to find like symptoms and kind of understand what reasons there are for chronic pain, and eventually my phone kind of picked up what I was trying to do, and I started getting videos on TikTok and Instagram about endometriosis, and I was like, this sounds familiar, like all of these symptoms are what I'm experiencing. But obviously when I took it to the GP and to my consultants, they were like, you don't have it. Like, this is crazy. Why would you have endometriosis? You're too young. And why are you Googling it? Like, this is ridiculous. We're the
Yeah.
doctors. And then, they were about to send me for a psych evaluation, which is actually why we went to India. And later on, I realized that my first MRI that was done 8 months after my first surgery actually indicated endometriosis. But they brushed it out. They brushed it off as like, I don't know, just thickening of the wall. I'm too young to have it, and these are top class surgeons from Oxford. So. But yeah, and now it's visible on MRIs, and it's so severe, and yeah, I don't know. It's just
I
not
totally
good.
I really am sorry. I can't, because it's like though you think those are the ones that really have it right and got their stuff together, and it's those
Yeah,
quiet surgeons or specialists that aren't so loud about what they do or recognized for it that end up being those ones that guide us
yeah,
in, the right path. So I think that's
yeah,
definitely something that we should be aware of as we're looking for answers and trying to
yeah,
advocate for ourselves. I love what you said because I really relate to that about that starting over again and again. You said just as you get used to something, it just shifts again. I know especially for me
yeah,
this past surgery, just I felt like my whole life restarted, like restart button. I'm like, "What?" And
yeah,
the unknown, but I love the attitude you have that's positive of, "Okay, where is this gonna take me next?" Do you feel like your art has kind of done the same thing as long like, has how has your art changed over the years?
um, very drastically. Um, Initially, obviously, I always looked at some sort of life. I've not been very good at painting people realistic. I did art for my GCSE, and at that point, I looked at nature and flowers specifically, which I think ties in very well to what I do now as well. But I started looking at flowers and their life from birth to death. And I actually recently um, that is of an abdomen, and the theme was nature. So I went back to my flowers, and I added cracks in the abdomen, and then I used vine and flowers to kind of tie it together. And one of my pieces is called Tide, and so I named this one Held. So it kind of balances it out. So it's definitely changed, but I think it has changed with experience, and you can definitely see my journey throughout my art and how I view pain and how I've dealt with pain. It's definitely visible throughout it.
what do you look forward to as far as your future projects? That piece, I mean, it really speaks volumes, like what you just described about. I love, especially when it comes to titling works. I think that's a whole nother podcast episode, I could say, for artists. And florals, while they come across as like something that you see tons of artists do, they're actually portrayed and captured in just so many different ways that can mean a lot. And I love how you tie that into your work. Do you, for the future, that I was saying, is there a different angle that you see yourself wanting to explore as far as endo warriors and telling their stories? Or is there any other project that maybe you haven't shared yet, or ideas that are kind of brewing?
Yeah, so an exciting one definitely that I'm working on right now, and I'm trying to fit it all together, but it is official. I have an exhibition in June for 3 weeks. It's in the Central Library near me. Yeah, so I have decided, especially as I'll have about 60 warriors by then. So I'm gonna get them all printed. And I am gonna have one wall just with all these warriors. I initially thought that I'd also add their stories with their illustrations, but then I think that the illustrations should speak for themselves, and then I thought that I'd do them as a collage. But then if I do them individually, I think it screams each story. And rather than putting them all together and being one voice, I think they should each have a voice, and it would make more of an impact if they are individually placed. So I'm just trying to put it all together, but I think there's a lot of meaning behind how it will be set and what pieces I'll include. And especially, I'm really excited to have all the warriors on display, because that would be really, it would speak volumes.
Absolutely. Do you have a title for the show or the exhibit or that particular the series?
No, not yet. It's part of Bucks Art Weeks, so I was part of it 2 years ago, and this exhibition is joint with my mom's, so it will tie in somehow. Still working it out, but that part of the warriors being on display is a definite, because I really want that to, I don't know, I want it to make an impact, and I want them to be displayed, and that a story should be shared with the wider public, not just our community, and hopefully it will create a little more awareness.
I imagine so. It sounds amazing. I wish I could be there for it in person. And are any of the warriors able to attend in person?
I hope so. I haven't actually published anything yet, so this is the first time I've said anything about it. But yes,
you said
I
that.
will be publishing.
I feel so lucky.
Yeah. But I will be publishing it, and hopefully if anyone is nearby, then hopefully they'll be able to come and have a look and show some support.
You're extremely talented. I can't wait to see it all come together. Is there anything about your experience that you feel like people just don't talk about enough, or that you wish you had back then?
I think I was very lucky to have a good support system from the beginning. Particularly family-wise, my mom has been there for me from the start. And also community-wise, I found the endometriosis community quite early, which is very lucky, because I think people find it quite late on, and it's still good support whenever you find it. But for me to find it because I was so young and so alone, and I didn't have the chance to go out and kind of find people, it was very useful to find the community online. But yeah, I think there are lots of things that could have been different. I think me being from a South Asian background as well, and my community surrounding me in person is particularly South Asian. There's a lot of taboo around speaking about periods, and I think this is the same in a lot of cultures, so it's not just me. But I have worked with quite a lot of people in the community as well who are working on this, like the organization Sisters. I recently did an art piece for them for their report, and they were looking at longer waiting times for people from ethnic backgrounds. So I think there's an impact from that side as well, which I haven't paid too much attention to, because I think waiting times for all of us are long anyway. And yeah, but obviously things like racism and that side of things, I definitely want to break that a little bit more, and I like to make people uncomfortable, especially
I
from
love
our
that.
community. I think, yeah, I want them to talk about it, and I'm suffering from it, not them. And if they are, I want them to talk about it too. I think South Asian women, the waiting times are longer because we don't talk about it, and because periods are considered not good. Like, we're not dirty or we're not disgusting. It happens to half the population, so I don't see why we're not talking about it. So I really want to break those barriers and do something in a way that kind of, yeah, I just want them to talk about it. So hopefully we can do something in that way and change that a little bit for the future generations to come, and make them more comfortable to talk about it, because otherwise we just start hiding it, and that's not helping anyone.
Thank you for sharing that part of your experience and background. I think that's something that is definitely overlooked, and in the different populations, like the idea of not just it not being paid attention to, or different factors like funding, but like you said just there, it's not that they don't want to talk about it, like for some groups, but more so it's like we just don't, and that's normal, and that's scary, because my mom didn't talk about it and her mom didn't talk about it, and periods are just normal, so don't complain, right? Every culture is different, and in that sense it definitely shifts like the perspective and the conversation. And for any listeners, I am so happy to share with you that her work will be in our show this fall in the exhibit. My big, I was calling it my baby, but now it's like my big baby. I have the start of Flair, is this art show, and similar to what you shared about having like all the different separate works of all these different artists and then them coming together as a collaborative voice. It's the power is so strong and echoes across the world, and that's why I'm so excited to share your work and learn more and more about all these different stories that people have to share, because it might sound the same, but in so many ways it is very, very different. And we have a lot to learn from each other, not just as fellow endo warriors, but like you said, just the different cultures, the different ways. I'm learning more through all these conversations, how all the different protocols and different processes in different countries, how it's addressed, how it's acknowledged or not. And yeah, I mean, you have kind of like that dual perspective, right? In the UK and India, that is also unique. So you've shared a lot here. I'm so grateful. Is there anything that you want another young person, especially someone creative who has just been diagnosed with endometriosis, to hear? What is something that you would share?
Well, I'd say that endometriosis does suck, and especially at a young age, it takes a lot from you. And for me personally, it's developed so fast and so drastically. I try not to think about it, but the reality is that it's invading organs and it's going through organs and it's sticking organs together, and it's ridiculous, and I absolutely hate it. But I think there are things that we can take from it that help us to keep going, because it's not going anywhere, unfortunately. But something I did was art, and I developed it, and I think personally for me, it flipped my life in a good way. And I was initially going to go and do finance and business and stuff like that, and now I'm going to uni to do art.
Wow.
And that's something that I absolutely love, and I honestly, I think about it every day. I'm like, for the rest of my life, I'm just going to sit here and paint. Like, what a dream!
That's the dream.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So I think we can take good things from it, and I found a whole new community and incredible friends of all ages, not just my generation, but I've met women who are my mum's age and women who are younger than me, and they've gone through way more than I have, and way more surgeries, and everyone's experience is very different, but I think we all have this mutual understanding, and it's very important to find your community and find your people within that, and it helps so much to get through it, because now when I have a down day, I can message one of them and they'll laugh with me and they'll say, hey, me too, I'm also getting the stabbing pain. And we cry about it and then we laugh about it. And I think it's very hard to physically find people around you who are going through the same thing, especially so young, and especially when everyone is going and doing these big wonderful things and you're just stuck. It is very isolating. So I think, find your community and just try and get it out in any way possible. For me, that was art, but I also dance. So for me, recently I've picked that back up somehow. Even if my disease is getting worse, I think it's a great way to kind of get that frustration out and just get out of the house, to be honest. But even through dance, my teacher is so understanding, and she has recently done a show on women, and she's looking to develop that show, and she said to me a couple of times that she'd really like to include endometriosis in it, and it just that validated me in a very unique way, because she doesn't have endometriosis, but I think her mum did, and she sees me and she connects with it, and for her to say that, hey, we want to develop this and we want to show it to the world in another art form is a very cool thing. So you do find things that make it a little bit better to deal with. It's just, finding it.
I second that, because you're right. And if I'll add to that, my advice would be, don't be afraid, because when I first got my diagnosis, I was like, oh, like you said, looked up the word about the weird disease. And I was like, I got afraid. And instead of choosing to join the community, I kind of hid away. And I was like, I'm just going to pretend I don't have this. And then you make a fantastic point that there are other communities that actually could provide a platform for you to be heard and to have what you're going through and the disease actually be voiced, amplified, put on, like with dance. That's so cool. And movement, it's funny you bring that up, because the Endo Moves Club, Sophie, yes, I've been brainstorming with her some ideas for workshops, kind of throwing around the title of The Art of Movement, because it is another excellent way to express yourself and process the pain and what we're going through. So yes, I love to hear that. Dance is something I enjoy, but definitely nothing I don't think I've ever taken to the next level. But where can people find you?
Well, on all platforms, my social is God Love Endo. So yeah, everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. and Substack now.
And your website too, right? It has like more
Oh,
of
yes.
her portfolio is on there. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's just my name, prajakta.co.uk. So that has got everything art related on there, from dance to, there's a whole page of the warrior stories, which I do have to update, but I think there are about 40 on there so far. And yeah, warrior stories, the other chronic related art, and all the acrylic paintings that I've done related to it. So everything's on there. You can go and find it.
And as always, I'll include all of the links and all this information in the show notes. Another question, if someone listening is interested in having their story told through your art, what are the steps?
So I've made my life a little easier, and I've made a Google form. So that can be found in my bio on Instagram, or just send me a DM and I'll send it to you. So that has all the questions that I need answers for, and then you can send me pictures related to chronic illness or surgery, or most people send me post-surgery scars and, them in hospital, which I think is the most common way of kind of representing their chronic illness and their journey. But anything, I've had pictures of dogs, I've had pictures of them going about and doing something they love, but kind of still in pain. So literally anything that you want your story to be told as, I can try and include that.
Thank you. I'm sure after this episode, you'll have a handful of warriors coming through your inbox. Yeah. I saw something the other day. It said, we're not pretending to be in pain. We're pretending to be fine. That was very powerful. Yeah. And it stuck with me the past few days. I was like, wow.
Yeah. Like, I think another thing related to that is that they say that, I think someone said, we do it for the comfort of others. So, it's not that we want to pretend to be fine, but obviously if we are in pain all the time and, are vocal about it to everyone around us, it's making them uncomfortable. So we're doing it for them, which is so draining. And I think a lot of this start like distancing from, like, personally, I've lost so many friends and family from just not being able to reply quickly or, meet up regularly. So I think we should, I don't know, I still feel bad about it, but it's a process.
I still feel that way sometimes, even with my husband. Yeah. Like, I noticed myself the other day, like, he was in the middle of talking, or what was it? It was like, I felt obligated to stay in the chair in the kitchen or finish our conversation, listen, or like help him clean, whatever it was. And then I recognized, and I'm learning after the surgery, I was like, I'm so uncomfortable, but why am I kind of the same things you just said? I'm like, why am I not saying that? And I was like, excuse me, baby, I'm so sorry, but like, I need to go lay down. But why have I gone like so much, most of my life, just being like doing that way, like you said, I don't want to make people uncomfortable. And then can you imagine, like, yes, losing friends or relationships over it, and then you become even more heightened and worried about that. It's just add it to the list, to the bag full of things that we carry.
I think it's a lot of isolation, and I think a lot of us do feel that. Even if we are surrounded by people, it's very, it's still very lonely because they don't share our pain. They can try and understand. I mean, for me, I can see that my mom literally does feel the pain with me, but it is very rare to have someone like that around you. And especially friends wise, I mean, none of my friends have seen anyone have endometriosis. I think I'm the first, and I've educated them nicely, but still they, a lot of them have left. A lot of them have been like, hey, you don't care about me. I'm like, no, I just have to care about me a little more, And I think at some point I did stop feeling guilty about it because I was giving so much that I was so exhausted. And now I barely have the energy. I'm very vocal about it, especially to friends, because otherwise they don't understand. But I'm like, I don't have the energy to get up and brush my teeth. So replying to you is honestly the last thing on my mind right now. And I'm sorry if that's like, it's too mean, or I don't know, but I don't have time to go around the bush either because I'm really tired. So some people understand, some people don't, but that's why our community is so important, because I can leave them on red for like weeks and they'll still understand. But yeah, it's just about finding your people, really.
I know, you're right. You're so right. It's another skill, literally, that we pick up and learn and have to practice, which is listening to our bodies and taking care of ourselves. I think that's one of the most important lessons to be learned in all this. Well, thank you so much. And as always, stay creative, keep healing. Talk soon.